Hello, peace be with you. The notion that I want to address today is the notion of disease, illness. The way we have to deal with it, the way we are dealing with the notion in our daily life is quite important, and especially when we are facing pandemic realities in our daily life. We need to get a better understanding of the meaning of disease in our life and the way we have to deal with it. And the way also we are tackling the very notion of disease from a moral viewpoint or from a materialistic viewpoint. I think that we have to start with trying to define in a very simple way the notion of disease in our life. When we speak about disease, the first thing that we are dealing with is an alteration of the function, of the right function of our body. So it has to do with imbalance versus harmony. It has to do also with something that is altering the good functioning of our body. It could be our body, it could be our mental health, it could be our psychology. When something is happening which is altering the right functioning of our body and our psyche, we are talking about disease. So from there are two things that are important when it comes to imbalance versus harmony. The first has to do with symptoms. Very often we are dealing with symptoms, and it could be anything which has to do with our body, when it's something is broken, when we have a flu or anything could happen. Sometimes the symptoms are quite heavy and sometimes they are not even visible. But very often disease has to do with visible or felt symptoms. The third dimension has to do with suffering. Because we are dealing with disease, we are dealing with suffering, we are dealing with not feeling good. Feeling good means that our body is in harmony, and when there is this imbalance, when there is this dysfunction in our body, we feel suffering, we feel that something is not going right. So this is the very basic definition of illness, of disease, and we have to deal with it when it comes to us as human being. How do we deal with it? How do we react to it? And I would just highlight three main reactions that we have as human beings when we are dealing with disease. The first one is just to refuse it or to go away far from it and to try to combat the disease. It means that we are trying to heal, we are trying to cure, and we are dealing with a kind of enemy that we are trying to combat in our daily life. It could be with our medicine, with our drugs. This is the natural way to deal with it, and this is what we are doing when we are human beings. This is at an individual and collective level. This is the way we deal with it. There is another way of dealing with the disease and the illness in our life, which is also, when it comes to look at nature, is to project onto nature our moral understanding of things. So because the disease is attacking us, because the disease is attacking our health, we project onto the disease the very notion of bad. This is bad. This is the bad dimension of the moral equation. Bad versus good. The good is my health and the disease is bad per se, and I'm combating what is bad in my life. This projection into the natural order is something which is present in all the spiritual and the religious traditions. This is what we find. And we have to be very cautious with this because we need to get it right in our life. Something is to moralize the events that we are facing, and something else is to extract moral teachings from events in our life. And we have to be very cautious. Religions and spiritualities are helping us to extract, to get the moral significance of things and not to project morality onto events. And I will be clearer about this in the second part of this podcast. Now, the third attitude, I would say, is just to take a step back and to look at the cosmic order, at the global order of nature, and to understand that except God, in the Islamic tradition, but also in all the monotheistic tradition, God is one and everything else is created in couples. So this is what we have in the Quran. وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ. God is one and we created everything in couples. So this duality, this reality of the two is something also which is essential in the human understanding. We find it in the yin and yang, in the Asian tradition, in Confucianism, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, also in the monotheistic tradition. That the duality, the internal, the intrinsic duality of things and nature is something which is essential in our life. So it means, for example, that if you look at nature and you consider the natural order, you just can consider that this is the good. But we also have to understand that the natural disorder that could destroy nature and sometimes destroy the nature as we see it in harmony could be perceived as the bad dimension. And in fact, we understand that we can't consider things in this way because, in fact, the natural order is in need of natural catastrophes. In fact, it's through the natural catastrophes that we have this regeneration, this new life coming. The strength of the order is also nurtured by the disorder, the natural disorder. I'm not talking about what we are doing now with nature, destroying nature. I'm talking about the natural order that we had and we still have, and that we have to consider that natural disorder sometimes are essential. Not sometimes, are always essential, always important. If you disrespect nature, the natural catastrophes are just telling you, sending us a message, a human being, that we are not treating nature well and that nature is suffering. So this is a message not to tell us that natural catastrophes are bad, but natural catastrophes are important for us to understand that nature and the natural order needs to be respected. Now it's exactly the same when it comes to life and death. If you look at a lion just killing its prey, we need here to understand that that's nature. You're not projecting onto this the reality of good and bad. That's life, and life needs to eat, needs to have praise, needs to also go towards the reality of life and death. So we will have victims and we will have predators, and we will have the reality of the natural order is based on life and death. So there would be no understanding of what life means if we don't get the reality that in order for some species to be able to live, they have to kill. And those who are killed also are killing others in order to be able to live. So this is the natural order, with no morality here, but the very essence of what life is and death is in the global order. Look at this, the reality through this angle, and try to get it right when it comes to health and when it comes to illness and disease. That's exactly the same, that illness is coming to us and we can consider, oh, it's bad, it's against me, it's my enemy, because it's disturbing and altering the harmony in my body. Now we need to get that it would be no health if we do not experience disease. And disease is helping our body to find the weapons, I would say, to find the right means to face the reality of disease and to become stronger. So there is no health without experiencing disease, and there is no health that is becoming stronger and stronger without the reality of these diseases that are attacking us and helping us to survive. So from this viewpoint, what do we understand within the couples that we have here? Order, disorder, life versus death, health versus disease. Three things are important here. The first is that the one cannot go without the other. So you can't talk about order without talking about disorder. You cannot talk about harmony without considering disharmony. So one cannot go without the other. The second dimension is that you cannot understand the one if you don't get the other. So your understanding of health needs to be nurtured and apprehended through your understanding of disease. So this is also something which is very important for human beings. Add to this that not only you can get one without getting the other, the one needs the other. So they are in need from one another. That's also something which is essential in our understanding of the cosmic order, and then the duality within the cosmic order, that one is giving meaning and strength to the other. Having said that, and if we go and take this step back and get a sense of this global order, this natural order, the reality of harmony and the reality of what nature is teaching us, and through nature what God and what the spiritual life is teaching us through this experience. We have a question to ask here. Is nature talking about morality? In fact, it's, as I said, completely different than to project onto nature moral teachings and moral projection, than to extract, to draw out of this natural experience moral teachings for us human beings. What do we do when we are facing the reality of nature? Sometimes we are projecting moral teachings, but in fact the process is quite different. What we do is our consciousness is awakened when we are dealing with nature, and through this process our consciousness is just translating this into words. So we verbalize what we are experiencing, and through the process of being aware, being conscious of what is happening around us, this consciousness of the reality of the world and the words that we are putting onto this reality, we then translate this into morality. So this is what we are used to do. So very often through this experience and this experience of natural event, we moralize the natural events in a way which is not what in fact we'll find in the religious traditions. The religious traditions are not telling us nature is moral, but draw moral teachings from the natural order, which is completely different. That's completely opposed to what our nature would do straight away if we don't consider the reality of what is happening. Having said that, and understanding that in fact order and disorder, life and death, health and disease are not moral categories. They are realities from which, through our experiences within these two realities, we have to draw, as I said, moral teaching. Now, what is important when we are facing disease, when we are facing pandemic reality as we are facing today, and when we are facing disease in one society or with one individual, it's very important, and we have to be very cautious not to project onto an individual and onto a society a sense of guilt. You are experiencing this because you are guilty. No, that's not the way. And we have this in the Quran also, that we have to be very cautious with moral condemnation based on what you see. ولا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم. Don't laugh at people. They might be better than you. So the moral projection of what they appear to be, because they are experiencing disease, That's not something that you can do. In fact, that's quite the opposite that you have to do. As a human being, you have to come back to your own conscience, to your own understanding of yourself. And through this experience, what disease is telling you in your life, you come back to your conscience, you verbalize your own life, and you try to extract, to draw from this experience some teaching, some lessons for your own life. And then this becomes a reminder. A reminder. In fact, disease is a reminder, is as all the signs that you have within nature telling you, just look at yourself, come back to yourself. Through this consciousness, now that you are awake, not that your conscience is awake, come back to yourself, look at the sign, look at this disease, and try to extract out of this experience some teachings for your life. So it's a reminder. And through the reminder, what you have to do is to question yourself. No one on earth is absolutely innocent. No one of us is perfect. You are dealing in your daily life with some of your weaknesses, with some of your forgetfulness in the way you deal with human beings, in the way you lack respect towards nature, towards your fellow human beings, towards migrants, towards poor people. Come back to you. And through this, so disease is calling you back to the essential and asking you to consider your own life, and through this to help you to go through a process of purification, spiritual purification, the reality that you have to deal with your own self. So instead of being a way for you to spread judgments on others, is the way to come back to yourself through and within a responsible way of dealing with your own consciousness and your own way of dealing with what is happening to you. So it's much more a call for more responsibility than a call for spreading guilt around the world. Because the cosmic order is telling you there is nothing bad in disease, and health is not always good. It's what you do out of them that is helping you to get the moral teaching here and to be able to come back to yourself within the cosmic order in order to extract from this experience the moral teachings that are going to help you to become a better human being. So this is where you get a sense that this cosmic order, based on these contradictions and the duality that is intrinsic to being in time and history, in time and space, it's important. The last thing that are important here, the last things that are important are the teachings that you need to get out of this. Through this experience of disease and illness, you experience a sense of vulnerability. Meaning here that you should get it, that you are not stronger than the natural order, that you are not stronger than death, that you are not stronger, even if you are experiencing health, you are vulnerable. And this sense of vulnerability in spiritual terms means humility, that you have to be humble. And within the whole process, if you look at the world, you also should remember, and this is essential in the way you deal with nature, you have to remember to thank for what you have, to thank for who you are, and to thank because you are able to deal with this disease in a way which is helping you to be a better human being. So the dysfunction of your personal intimate harmony is helping you to struggle to be a better human being. And for this, for the harmony at the origin and the harmony that you are trying to get through your effort and your ongoing effort, you have to thank God, and you thank nature for that, because this is also something which is essential. Add to this that you have to remember that you are vulnerable, you have to think, and you also have to struggle, because your life, it's all about this, knowing that you are in tension between the polarity of the good and the bad, the polarity of life and death, of disorder and order, that health and disease are part of your life. This is where you understand that you have to reform yourself, that you have to try to be a better human being, that it's an ongoing struggle to be a better human being. So nature is sending you a message, which is it's all about struggling, educating, reforming yourself, and at the same time to know that you cannot do it on your own, and to know that you have to thank God for being able to go through this process. Don't forget to tell the people you love that you love them. Life is fragile. Peace be with you.